I last year swam a triathlon, a sprint, the shortest version of it. Let me be clear. You swim, you bike, and you run. And I've done a couple of these before. Let's see, my wife, Caitlin, was there. She's here somewhere. A couple others in the church were with us. Yeah, and we prepared for it. We exercised. We did the things you're supposed to. And I remember getting into the water up at Bass Lake, and I swam, 20 strokes. And I already started to feel like a tightness in my chest where it started becoming hard to breathe. And I'm like, oh, it's a little cold water. Your body gets used to it. Just keep going. Do another 10 strokes. I'm like, oh my God, I'm really struggling to breathe here. Another 10 strokes go, and I'm trying to undo my wetsuit from there's the long strap in the back because I feel like everything is just pressing upon my chest. My vocal cords, my breathing, I can't take a full breath, which when you're exercising, it's really helpful. And I start panicking a little bit. Is this where it ends? I'm 18 feet from the boat dock, and this is how I die. There's a bunch of bodies around me. They're not going to notice that I'm just laying at the bottom of the lake. And I had to call for help. I had to wave down the person on the jet ski and be like, yeah, I'm that guy that needs help. And I finally got the strapper off of me and then I just swam the rest a half wetsuit. It's floating and making me slower. And I'm kind of doggy paddling on my back. I swim away. What had happened is I had trained, but my wetsuit was too tight. The beginning of the wetsuit, which I should have caught on to earlier, and maybe I should have practiced swimming with the wetsuit on more, but it needs certain space between your body for water to actually get in so that you can breathe, and it was so tight that water didn't get in between, so it just constricted, and I legitimately could not breathe. That was honestly one of the times that I could remember in my life where I thought about dying. This literally, it might end right here. I am panicking. I wonder, has anyone had any moments in their life where they panicked because they thought they were going to die? And it led to you needing to ask for help, calling out, crying out. You did not see something on the other side. And thankfully, you sit here today. But it could have been a very close call. When physical things happen to us, when emotional things happen to us, when relational things happen to us, we can pick up the sense of danger and we can be quick to call for help, that we need rescuing of some form. Where that doesn't always seem to be true, for those that have been Christians for a long time, those that are considering themselves a Christian, those that are trying to navigate God and if they are a Christian or not, trying to figure things out, we tend to think higher of ourselves than we actually are. I think I am better than who I actually am and how I actually am. That I don't need much fixing. I'm pretty good. If more people thought the way I thought, could you imagine this world? If more people were like me, it would be so much better. I would just be able to say you're welcome to everybody all the time. This is how you wake up in the morning. You have a view of who you are and what you know and what you're setting out to do that makes sense to you. And the depravity of actually what our life could be, if we really take a look, is something that's easier to distance from and to look at what we think is good about ourselves. This is just how we wake up. This is a disposition of self. And it's not easy for us to recognize the areas of our life that we might need rescuing that is more about us. It's more about who I am. It's more about how I behave. It's more about how I think. It's more about how I view the world. But what if that's the thing you and I need most? That we actually need rescuing. And there's ways that we kind of come to form these things. We get a couple tricks in church. We pick up a couple Christianese words that are just so unhelpful to everyday life. I don't know why we do that. But we pick up a few things to feel good about ourselves. We learn a new trick. We maybe, do some therapy and we start to figure a couple pieces out, which I recommend. We start to figure out brokenness in our lives and we learn how to mask it. So not other people really know who I am. We can just kind of keep doing this. And then we can even look at other people like, man, I'm doing better than they are, so I'm good because look at them. And then every person at every level, like think about a prison right now. Every person in there would be like, I messed up. I'm a pretty good person. Look at those people over there. And then the person in that, why they got in prison, they look at the next person down and is like, I can't believe they did that. How did they ended up here? They're so much worse than me. So I could keep going down on this. But let me do this. Say you and I went to the Central Coast and we stepped our feet into the cold Pacific water and we set out to swim to Hawaii. Anybody? I hate sharks, by the way. So I'm not joining you on this. But like, what would happen? A few people, I don't know, you get in there, your body freezes, and you just float to the bottom. You sink. You don't float. And then a few people are like, I can kind of swim. And you get kind of past a few waves, and you get out there, and you go a little bit further, and then you just die. And then someone else is like, man, I'm a really strong swimmer. And they make it like, I don't know, 300 more feet, and they die. And what we realize really quickly is that it leads to the same thing for every single person that entered the water. Really quickly, I could feel better about myself by making it 10 more yards than the person next to me. The reality, though, I still need rescuing. I cannot make that. You need rescuing. All of us need rescuing. And this is where we get to turn to Jonah. An odd book that we're not totally sure what to do with. We think a fish or a whale ate him, and usually in the Christian church we have to make sense of how that happened and how he lived. And we have to think about like oxygen levels inside of a whale's belly, like down in the depths of the sea, and like this is, science. And then we just like stop talking because we can't make sense of it. And people are like, yeah, that's why Christianity's dumb. That's how that kind of goes, okay? Now, I'm not here to say that this is literal or not. You can have your own interpretation of the scriptures. What I would offer you, though, is that if we try to figure out the whale, we're actually missing the larger story of Jonah and how it actually makes sense for our lives. One of the quotes that we've been using to intro this has been really helpful for me. Men have been looking so hard at the great fish that they have failed to see the great God. And so what we're asking is, who is this God? Who is this God of the Bible? I was working on some slides, and Emery, one of my daughters, was looking at them, and she's like, "Oh, Dad, there's a whale, and there's like a person falling on top of him." I'm like, "Oh yeah, we're talking about Jonah on Sundays." And she's like, "Oh, I know about Jonah. He's the guy that fell over, and the whale ate him." And she went on, and I was like, "Yeah, that proves the point that is the one thing we think about when we think about Jonah." And I realized I have job security, because they get to grow up with that, and then I get to like talk about how it's not just about that. So this is good. This is good news for me. But very quickly, it's just about this whale eating a man, and we're not terribly sure what to do with it. But I would offer that there's great sense that we can make of who God is to better make sense of our lives. We've talked about that He is the God who calls. He is the God that pursues. And today, He is the God that rescues. He is the God that rescues. We learn through Jonah that Jonah is called to go to a city called Nineveh, a great city of great terror and horror. Many would relate it to a Jewish commoner dropping into Berlin and facing Hitler and his Nazi army and telling them to stop. That would be the idea of what it means for Jonah to go to Nineveh, because God has chosen him as a prophet to go and tell the people of Nineveh to turn from their evil ways. They were ferocious. Like, you imagine what a bad group of people do to other people and then like go further. This is Nineveh. But God called him. But what does Jonah choose to do? He chooses to run from his calling. He says, I'm not going to go to Nineveh. I'm going to go all the way to Tarshish where the ships are, and I'm going to flee by sea. And it is so much further to go to Tarshish than it is Nineveh. It does not make sense. People do not travel that far. And then what we start to see is that this God who calls then starts to now become the God who pursues. Because Jonah is going further and further away. And the language in there is the idea that he's going down from the temple to the sea. He goes down onto the ship. He goes down into the belly of the ship. He goes down, down, down. And what it does is it offers you and I a mirror to look into, to ask the questions of, where do you and I go down? Where do we go away from the things that God is inviting us to in our life? What are the patterns and behaviors that are just about us in our life and much less about what God is actually calling us to? And he holds up a great mirror for you and I to examine ourselves. And then we get to this part. We finally, at the end of chapter 1, we get to Jonah 1:17. He gets thrown overboard. So he is tossed by some other people in the ship, some basic sailors who don't know who God is, and they're like, I don't want to toss this guy overboard, he's nuts. And God's like, go ahead and toss him overboard. So they just throw him overboard. And the ship, the waters, and the storms actually stop instantly. And then he starts to just sink. Caitlin and I were blessed to go on a trip this last week, and it was a cruise. And I was really like reading and prepping Jonah stuff while like looking out of the vast ocean, which is an absolute nightmare for me. Again, sharks. But people fall off of cruise ships. You've heard stories. It is wild. The ship's going so fast. And like things become such a little blip instantly. And the vastness of the ocean is terrifying to me. There's been moments where I've looked at it and been like, man, God is wonderful and so big. And this is the worst. I can't imagine being stuck in that water. And so Jonah is just sinking with no help, with no hope. And then it says, the Lord provided a huge fish to swallow Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. The Lord provided is this idea of manna, this bread that would come just for the day to give the people just what they needed and nothing more and nothing less. And this whale is the same provision from the Lord to give Jonah exactly what he needs. Nothing more, nothing less. It's a God who will pursue his people no matter how far they want to run from him. And so we pick up now that he's in the belly of the ship, and we change from Jonah, the description of everything going on, to him actually starting to have a conversation with God. From inside the fish, Jonah prayed to the Lord his God. He said, in my distress I called to the Lord, and he answered me. From deep in the realm of the dead I called for help, and you listened to my cry. You hurled me into the depths, he's saying to God. Into the very heart of the seas, and the currents swirled about me. All your waves and breakers swept over me. Is that an interesting thought? That God threw Jonah over the ship? Does that mean that God was intentionally putting him in harm's way and peril to sink to his own death? Is that God that did that? Well, technically it was the sailors that did it. It was their hands. They're the ones, I just imagine a few of them, like one grabs the feet, one grabs the arms, they swing a few times, and then just toss them over. It was their hands. But it was also Jonah's idea. Hey, guys, just throw me overboard. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go to the next thing. Just throw me overboard. Who is it? Many would grow up maybe with a narrative that God is one of punishment, that he is out to get you, that he is here to just punish and make right. I don't want to make sense of the entire scriptures from one passage, but would offer that we don't see a God who grabs people by the body and throws them to their death. He is not walking around watching and saying, oh, nope, wrong step. Like, he doesn't do that. What he does, though, is he is aware of sin, brokenness, and separation. And the good news of him being a God of benevolence and a God who allows people to have will in their life, to have agency, he'll allow people to run. He allowed me to run for many years. He is one who would say that if that's the way you want to go, then so be it. And sin has consequences. Separation from what's good has consequences. But what if the very movement of Jonah being thrown into the sea is the exact place in which God planned to meet him? What if at the very same time, God is allowing people to choose the direction in their life, and at the very same time, his hand continues to stretch towards them? That there is not a length at which his hand will stop to rescue somebody. And that's what shows up here in the well. Philip carried the fish. Sin is its own punishment precisely because the Lord made human beings to live in his sight, so that when they turn away from him, they turn inevitably to death. As Jonah does in his descent in Jonah 1, this is the Lord's doing, who made us that way. It is his doing that sinners are indeed the cause of their own death, as Jonah is indeed the cause of his own sinking into Sheol. It's Jonah's fault, but that does not mean the Lord didn't put him there. This is good news, for the result is that in every trouble we may turn and pray to the one who brought us there, who can also bring us out from whatever hell we sinners have made for ourselves. We may say to the Lord, you have laid me in the lowest pit in darkness in the deep. And it's therefore that we may have hope. Very contradictory in some senses. It is a tension to be held. 2 Corinthians 1:8-10 says, we do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters. Paul writes this about the troubles we experience in the province of Asia. We were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure, so that we despaired of life itself. Indeed, we felt we had received the sentence of death, but this happened that we might not rely on ourselves, but on God, who raises the dead. He has delivered us from such a deadly peril, and he will deliver us again. On him we set our hope that he will continue to deliver us. God is one who continues to rescue. As you notice in there's a thought that many have that God will not give us more than we can handle. You've heard it. You've said it. I've heard it. I've said it. It's false. God is absolutely willing to give you and I more than we can handle. Now, what he is not going to do is he's not going to tempt us towards sin beyond what he has equipped us with to resist. He is not luring us and feeding us to walk away from him. But I don't know if you've realized, life is overwhelmingly hard. Everything about it. You turn a corner and you kind of get good at something and then something else breaks. And then you piece that back together. Okay, everything's calm again, and then another thing drops. Life is hard. You and I do not have a chance at living the life that God has given us without depending on something greater than ourselves. But how do I wake up in the morning? Depending on myself. What can I make go today? What can I make sense? What can I make be easy and comfortable? What can I make so that I get to avoid hard things? But what if it's that very thing that God wants to walk through with us so that we experience more life than we can on our own? To separate from ourselves and to depend more fully on him for all things. He is one to save you and I, what I would offer first and foremost from ourselves. From ourselves. I said, I've been banished from your sight, yet I will look again towards your holy temple. The engulfing waters threatened me, the deep surrounded me. Seaweed was wrapped around my head. To the roots of the mountains I sank down. To earth beneath barred me in forever. But you, Lord, my God, brought my life up from the pit. The imagery gets deeper and darker. He's still going down and down and down. For the ancient world to, I think I have an image of it here, to understand, where it's trying to make sense of things, is they saw a big dome. That's what kept the water from flooding the world again. It protected the water in the skies. And then there was land above the water. And then you see Sheol, which could be really the place of death. It wasn't just afterlife death. It was just the place of death. You and I experience death now. We're not just sitting here waiting to go to life or death after we die. Death has entered in. This idea of Sheol is something that's actually upon us now, that you and I are present to. And I'm not talking just the loss of a loved one. I'm talking about the grief and the loss and the despair that you and I walk with, anxiety, depression, illness, racial injustice, lack of compassion, failure, morally, character-wise. It goes on and on. You and I are filled with the very same thing we try to resist and try to overcome. And he's drawing this imagery that he's going down deeper and deeper and deeper into Sheol. Who else went to Sheol? Jesus. We see the one who came to go into the deepest places that the human experience could understand, to overcome it and to rise up again. The imagery is that Jonah has reached the bottom of the bottom. And here he cries out, Lord, rescue me. And he even starts to say it in a way of thanksgiving. When my life was ebbing away, I remembered you. He turned back towards the temple, the one he fled in Joppa, where God's actual presence resided, the holiness of who God is, being physically located. He looked back and my prayer rose to you. God could hear his prayers to your holy temple. Those who cling to worthless idols turn away from God's love from them. How righteous Jonah became so quickly. Look at those people grabbing to false idols. He's speaking about himself. I now realize that I have been claiming to something that is false and untrue. I have been running from what is good. And I have gone to make something greater than it is in my life than who God is. You and I need something to worship because we've been made to worship, to prioritize something in our life, to actually center our lives around it, to allow it to dictate who we are, what we do, how we spend our time, our money, our energy, the way in which we operate in relationships, in our neighborhood, in our workplaces. But if we're not careful, all the things I just named actually become our idols. They start to dictate who we are, what we do, how we spend our time, our energy, our money, how we operate in our neighborhoods and our workplaces. But you, Lord God, brought my life up from the pit. But I will shout of grateful praise, will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed I will make good. I will say salvation comes from the Lord. Jonah in the deepest pits realizes at the end of the day there is only one thing that can rescue him. And it is God. It is his salvation. It's the same salvation that's broken into this room already. The one that has come to rescue you and I, to give us life, motivated by his grace and his mercy, and that continues to save you and I. This idea of salvation isn't a one-time thing. It's a present active verb, meaning that be saved and continue to be saved. You and I still need rescuing. It does not stop. It is not a one-time act. What has been displaced in your life to become greater than it actually is? What's the thing that has started to inform the way you spend your life more than it actually should? What voices have displaced God's voice for the call on your life? For the pursuit of his love and his mercy towards you? Where has shame and guilt crept in to push you into hiding? And it was in this proclamation, I will say salvation comes from the Lord. It ends chapter 2, and the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah into the dry land. Just projectiled him out of the mouth so aggressively. You and I need rescuing. And what I love about this is what it displays is that no matter the depth, God's rescue will reach. No matter the depth, no matter the depravity, no matter the brokenness, no matter the ill will done, no matter the harm caused, God's rescue will always go further. There is not an end to his mercy and his grace. And what I want to invite us to this morning, it's going to feel a little bit different. We're going to try it on and see how it goes. Is I want you to actually consider two questions. And this can be both past tense. It can also be present. So allow the Lord just to guide you where you go with this. I'm going to ask them and I'm going to tell you a story. But I wonder here, I know many in the room, You've been rescued by God. There maybe was an instance in your life that you remember being rescued by God. Maybe it was a progression of things in which you experienced rescue. Maybe you've kind of never really picked it up, but you just kind of know it to be true. Which also means that at some point in your life you were in peril, that you became aware of brokenness and death in your own life. That you became aware of maybe your own depravity and your separation from everything that is good and right. And those two things tell a unique story about who God is. I would also offer that those two things are some of the things we keep the most quiet about. That it's hard to tell that story, who to tell it to, why. But just like the God who calls and the God who pursues, God is inviting more people into his rescue efforts. As he did with the well. He is providing for people to join him for the provision of other people to be rescued. And these two things matter for your life because it was Jonah who remembered to look back to the Lord. That was a turning point for him. And you and I will chase everything else we're not supposed to when we forget. And isn't it so easy to forget? It's so easy to forget the rescuing that we need. I'm going to invite the worship team back up. And we're going to go into a practice. Tell this story with these two questions. Some of you have heard this before. I'll tell the succinct version. But I grew up in and around church, was baptized when I was 12, had like a real experience of coming to God at that time. And then what I've said is I was baptized, but I never actually walked with Jesus after that. And my life looked like my own. For a very long time. Everything about my life was true of the way I wanted it to be, true of my desires, true of my own affections. And I pursued everything that I wanted. And I would get everything that I wanted. And in our early 20s in school, Caitlin, my wife, and I met and had a very broken relationship early on. And over time, we realized that this was something we both wanted. It was something that we wanted to be better. And we committed to each other to being better, to doing better. And this was a time in which we also chose to start going to church, to walk with other people, to start attending a college group. So thankful for, again, the guy who worked for Cintas that changed the mats at the place I worked to invite me. I think I was his Nineveh. And things started to change. And I started to make certain decisions. I moved out of the house that I was living in because I knew that I would just continue in my ways with those who were up to the same ways. And so I removed myself. And then I started to make other decisions. Caitlin and I started making other decisions. We said no to certain things. And then one night, all things broke. I was living in a one-bedroom studio apartment above a garage in Old Town Sacramento. It was about 2 a.m. and I couldn't breathe. It's like that feeling of being in the water with too tight of a wetsuit. And grief and fear overcame me. This idea of death had grabbed my throat, and I could not stop crying. I look back, I think I was having a full-on panic attack. And the only thing I knew to do was to call my parents. And that's when the phones were by the bed, and it rang nice and loud. And they pick up like they always would. And I start telling them the best I can through sobbing words and trying to catch a breath. I can't stop thinking about death. I'm overwhelmed by this idea of death. And so they stay on the phone with me and they pray. And my mom, after praying, says, "Hey, why don't you turn one of those Christian music stations on the TV that's in like the 800s or whatever that you never go to?" And so I went and I just found one, and I wish I remember it because the song was almost identical to the prayer that my parents had just prayed. And so I sat with that for a little while and start dozing off. My dog is in the studio apartment with me. And then all of a sudden, on my roof, like I could feel it shake. My dog jumped up. So I knew it was real. And so downtown Sac, stuff gets broken into, cars, houses. I'm like, all right, here we go. This might be the end. Something new to fear. And I grab a bat. I grab my dog. Tough guy I am. I send the dog out first. And we go walk around. There's nothing on the ground. There's nothing on the roof. And wander around for a bit more. I go inside. I chalk it up to I don't know what. Go in, rested, fall asleep. I talk to my mom the next day. She asked me how I'm doing. I tell her what happened. She goes, wait, hold on. What happened? I was like, well, I was laying there dozing off and boom, 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 boom on my roof. She's like, well, how many noises? Like 4. She goes, your dad and I kept praying for you after we got off the phone, and we prayed for 4 angels to come down on the posts of your house. And it was like a 4-post house. You got these 4 pillars and then a little rectangle. And I still can't make sense of that, but what I know to be true is that there felt like a chiropractic adjustment in my body, like physically and spiritually. Something hit me from my head to my toes and just said, this was true. That God had pursued me, that God had reached down. Because what was starting to happen, I think, was that I was starting to do it on my own. Because that's all I knew. So let's do this religious thing on my own. Let's clean up. Let's cut things off. Let's be better. And how quickly now we just worship Christianity and religion. And I still miss God's rescuing efforts in my life. That was a pivotal moment. That's not everyone's story. But I know for certain that was a moment in which I realized the peril in which I was experiencing was that I was going my own way and I was getting everything in that way. And that was disastrous. And it was empty. And it was lonely. And then God rescued me. God met me in a way that I could never have dreamt of or made up on my own. And rescued me to give me life beyond myself. And so as this music plays, we have these 2 questions. I want you to reflect. This could be past, like mine. This could be present, because God's salvation is present and active. I want you just to write in nice, clean, simple words, the best you can. What peril were you in? What was life like? Where were you going? In which ways was it broken? How are you familiar with that peril? And then how did God rescue you? What did he do? How did he show up? What became different? And you could also read it in a way that says, what peril are you in right now? And how is God rescuing you right now?